Byron, you have been, over the past several weeks, really curating a phenomenal cinematic experience for people who are in your network, for your followers, and you've got these phenomenal films that you have not just shared with the world, but you've done so in a very unique way. Talk to us about this gathering that you have created, this digital communal space, if you will, that you have created over the course of past several weeks, which is continuing tonight with another edition of this series. Give us a sense as to what's happening here.
Well, Lurie, as you know, Congress rescinded, meaning they took back $1.1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR, which had a major impact on the entire public media system. Okay.
Hmm.
So, public media is how I get my funding to make my films. And not just me, but a lot of filmmakers, independent filmmakers, get their money through the public media system in some form or another. And so when Congress decided to take that money back and basically reduce the amount of money permitted to give out to filmmakers, I decided to just do something different and create my own series online on a platform called Gather. And really just say, look, I'm going to use what I have in my hand. My grandfather used to always say, use what you have to get what you need. And that's what I'm doing, right?
Hmm.
So um,
Hmm.
the Byron Herb Film Series on Gather is a way for people to watch my films, contribute to my production company, donate to the company, and also buy a ticket, which helps to generate revenue for my production company, God Bless the Child Productions.
Now, this is phenomenal because you have been doing a new iteration of these gatherings, I think almost weekly now. Talk to
Every
us about what this process has looked like for you, because this to me, and we have been really pushing on this show. We have a new segment called Mogul Mondays, which is basically a segment where I bring on some branding, business formation experts, and we talk about what it is to not just build a brand, but to build a profitable brand. And I've sort of leaned into this heavily because I'm of the perspective now, Brother Byron, that we're in a situation where essentially corporations are doing to employees what the federal government did to PBS, basically thrusting them out the door with barely a severance package. People are finding themselves in real financial difficulty. And we are now having to grapple with this conversation about whether it means we should get jobs or we should be self-employed and entrepreneurs. I have been growing into this mindset that says getting a job and working for someone else is kind of a luxury when you look at our history as a community. Like for most of our history, we have had to figure out what our talents were and how to profit from them. Like, I'm thinking about Miss Seeley when she left Mr. She was making Miss Seeley's pants. She had to figure out how to do that work. And so you are in the film space experiencing something that so many of us are experiencing in a variety of industries. And because you were already established, I think in some ways, this is a question, not a statement. You had the capacity. You weren't trying to start from scratch. You were already doing your own independent thing. Was this a shift for you into a slightly different direction, or did it require more of a pivot in order to look at the body of work that you have created and the way that you can continue funding additional art and additional films? Give us a sense as to the challenges that you faced in making this pivot, what that process was like for you. I cannot wait to hear all the gems that you have, because there are so many people who are trying to do something similar but just do not know how.
Well, I share your philosophy that we have to do for ourselves. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My uncle was a contractor. He had his own business. I watched him work out of his own basement. Where I am right now talking to you is my own home office basement. I got that from my uncle. And just learning how to create things for myself, right? Being a self-starter. So I think that that's really important. I've done that for a long time. We go back a long way, but I first ventured into trying to do something on my own and trying to raise money on my own when I launched a dollar for a dollar campaign, right? So I basically asked people way back in the day. This is way before Facebook and social media, IG, TikTok. And I asked people to send me a dollar, right? To help me get my film off the ground. This is when I was making hip hop beyond beats and rhymes. So I've always been sort of like a self-starter in this way. And so, yeah, it was a pivot. It wasn't that much of a pivot. It was just taking a tool that was being offered to me, a platform called Gather, which made it possible for independent filmmakers like myself to basically stream their films and to generate revenue by doing so. And so it's been an experiment. I have to say, it's been an experiment. You know, getting the word out has been a challenge, right? Getting people to be able to come and sit every Wednesday and watch a film, a documentary film. Many of them have been um, sort of supported by people who have already been supporters of my work. So that's been great. So what I'm trying to do now is to grow, is to build, is to expand on my audience, to bring new people who may not be familiar with my work, who may have never seen a film made by, by myself. Um, and so I'm just trying to just grow it. I'm trying to just make it bigger.
Yeah, yeah. So, this idea that you have this weekly series built around pre-existing work. Talk to us about what it might have been like if you were starting from scratch right now, right? You've already got a body of work. I read, and the films that I just shared with you all, that's just a fraction of the work that Byron has put out. If you were starting from scratch, trying to do an effort like this, what sorts of considerations would you have to consider? And once we sort of walk through some of the business considerations, I would love to talk with you about the artistic moments that you are having by creating these spaces and what that's been like for you as a filmmaker.
Well, I think if I was starting fresh with no films, I think it would be a really challenging environment to do that.
Yeah.
There's no mistake about it. I mean, the money has dried up, and I know many filmmakers, experienced and new, who are really struggling right now to get their stories told. I think a lot of people don't really fully understand and appreciate like how much it costs to make a film, a documentary, even a documentary film, can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, right? And so these are expensive ventures. And so, you need to have the financial support, the funding support of media arts organizations, right, who typically fund those projects. That's on hold right now. People across the industry are recalibrating. Everybody's pivoting. I'm not the only one. Everybody's trying to figure out how to exist in this new landscape that's really hostile to truth tellers, hostile to storytellers, hostile to anyone who's going to tell stories about Black history, about gender issues, about class issues, about inequities in power structures, and any of those issues are basically have been put on the back burner because there's no money to tell those stories right now. And so I think, following the model that I am at least attempting to pave the way for, I think is a good way to start. I know filmmakers who are still using crowdfunding on platforms like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and other platforms to raise money for their films. And I think, it's just going to create a new pathway for other innovative ways that Black and Brown people are using to get their films off the ground. It's a hard proposition. I wish that I
Yeah.
had like an answer, like I could say, oh, if you're a new filmmaker and you're trying to get your film done, you should do this, right? But I don't know what that thing is right now. So we're trying to figure it out, including myself.
Mm. I appreciate your honesty and your candor. Talk to me about the role that PBS has played in supporting the arts, because I think when people first heard about PBS having those funds rescinded, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I think a lot of people thought, oh, okay, that means that Sesame Street is going to have to find somewhere else to go, or that means that Downton Abbey is going to have to find. But I don't think people realize the commitment and the investment that public broadcasting has made in the arts, into filmmakers like yourself. Talk to us a bit about how it came to be that PBS and this network had such a pivotal impact on the creation of independent film and the telling of these stories, which we all treasure, even if we don't necessarily appreciate the cost that's behind it.
Yeah. Well, PBS was created because Congress and the general public felt that there needed to be a space, a media platform where people could get and have access to public information free, have free access to public information, right? So that the general public could stay informed about issues in the public interest. And so that's how PBS sort of started. And along the way, there are a lot of people who had to continue to fight for PBS because there have been many in power who felt threatened by some of the programming that PBS offers. For example, the filmmaker who I always acknowledge as like the very reason why I'm making documentary films today. Marlon Riggs. Marlon Riggs was an incredible filmmaker who made films about race, class, gender, sexuality. He was a black gay man, and when he made films for PBS, they were very controversial, almost to the point of being banned or censored from being aired. But there were people who fought for his right to tell his story and other stories. And so as a result, PBS has been sort of like that place. So when I was a college student, I was exposed to the work of Marlon Riggs. I saw his work as a college student. And because it was on PBS, that's where I said, okay, that's where I can tell stories about race, about gender, about, a variety of issues, and there be a home for that work, right?
Mm.
Now there are fewer spaces for those type of topics to be addressed, right? Because if you think about digital streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, all of the different platforms, they're interested in very limited topics: celebrity documentaries, sports films, true crime, and that's pretty much it, right? So now that PBS is experiencing these huge budget cuts, where is the space for social justice documentaries, right? And for social justice storytellers like myself? We have to create new spaces and new avenues. PBS is still there, but the funding is not at the same level as it used to be.
Right. What role does, and I'm asking this because I'm very curious about what FUBU forever means, right, for us, by us, and it feels like we are being pushed into you might not have wanted to have FUBU forever, but ain't nobody else gonna have you, so you might as well be FUBU forever. What would it look like for Black philanthropic dollars to shift into this space in some meaningful way? What sorts of, in just in terms of a dollar amount? I know you may not have the fullness in terms of what PBS was investing, but is there a range of the amount of the gap that we can conceptualize? Because I think hearing that those funds were rescinded is one thing, but having an understanding of the magnitude of the gap is another. We have a variety of folks in this audience, many of whom are very philanthropically motivated. What would it look like to have an angel investor, for example, step in to try to fill in the gap that you are experiencing as an artist? And then let's talk about what it would look like to try to fill in the gap as to what the industry of social justice truth tellers, as you said, what would something like that look like?
It's so interesting you say that because just the other day, this brother reached out to me, who I don't know personally, but he knows people that I know, and I know people that he knows. He's been watching what I've been doing on social media, with this series, and he told me to reach out to him. I called him, and he said, "Brother, I really respect your work. I see what you're doing." And he was telling me that he belongs to a group of black men that finances various projects, and he would be interested in having conversations with me and having me meet with these group of brothers to see if there's a way that they can support my work. One of the things that he said to me that really struck me, which was really important to me, Lurie, is he said, "I value you. I value your work." And he also recognized the fact that the time that we're living in right now is a time where our history is, well, let me rephrase that. This administration is trying to erase our history, right? This
That's right.
administration is trying to suppress truth, right? And so he recognizes that. And he also recognizes that black men like himself who have resources or are connected to resources have to step up and play a pivotal role in supporting filmmakers like myself. And so what he's proposing is helping me out by presenting me in front of these brothers so that they can potentially donate money or invest in me in some way. I appreciate that, right? One of the things that he said to me, he said, "Brother, I go to the vineyard, I go to Martha's Vineyard every single summer. I drop all of this money at Martha's Vineyard in various places, throughout the year." He said, "What if I took that money and I invested in somebody like you, somebody whose films are important and I value?" That meant a lot to me, right? Now, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I think more of that needs to happen. We need to, collectively pool our money together and support, filmmakers, the people who are trying to preserve our history and tell our stories. And when I say that, I'm not just advocating for myself, Lurie. I'm advocating for Black and brown filmmakers who are telling crucial stories that need to be told. And one other thing that I think is really important is that we really need filmmakers to be on the ground documenting what's happening right now in real time in front of
Oh,
our eyes. We need filmmakers who are courageous, bold, daring, who are going to basically tell the story of this era that we're in right now. And so in order for us to do that, we need the money to make that happen.